What's going on, my fellow Jedi and Padawans? Welcome back to another Jedi gaming video. Thank you guys so much for coming back to the channel, and if you guys are new, welcome. Today we are talking about the new meta for grenades inside of PvE for our Solar Warlock, since that nerf came to Starfire Protocol and our fusion grenades, with only getting a fourth of the energy that we used to. So the time that it took us to get 4 grenades, now we only get 1. So we are replacing that with the Sunbracers Exotic Gauntlets and those solar grenades with melee defeats, getting that infinite charge on your grenade energy, spamming that around for some pretty good DPS on enemies, as well as that ad clear is impeccable. Now, as always, starting out right here for our abilities, aspects, and fragments. Now, you know, in the PvE realm, always need a Well of Radiance. Definitely a staple of that endgame activity, survivability for PvE and Solar Warlocks. Now, for me personally, these are my abilities going with. You can really use whatever you want. Phoenix Dive, in my opinion, with this and Heat Rises is actually nasty, because while we have Heat Rises active, we gain restoration while diving, and we scorch targets upon landing, so we can get that restoration going, and it is very nice inside of that end game to have that little bit of health, plus we cure ourselves. Now, for me, I'm going with Balanced Glide, but it is truly up to you. Now, for melees, I personally like Celestial Fire better inside of both PvP and PvE, just because its distance is a little bit better, and I feel like the Snap sometimes does more of the spread damage with Scorch rather than direct damage to get defeats, and we really want those melee defeats to proc our Sunbracers, so I personally went with Celestial Fire. Now, we definitely need solar grenades right here that pair perfectly with one of our aspects and these grenades to get that increased duration, and we get that nice infinite charge on grenade energy when we get our melee defeats. Now, our first aspect right here is Heat Rises, which I was talking about earlier. We consume that grenade to activate Heat Rises. Final Blows while airborne increase the duration of Heat Rises, so if you're getting those defeats well in the air, doesn't matter if it's ability or with your weapon, you're going to increase that Heat Rises. Maxes at 30 seconds, but with this build, it feels like we really don't lose it at all after we consume that first grenade, because we get our abilities back so fast in this build, especially like it says, grants melee energy while you're in the air, so you get your Celestial Fire back very quickly when you're doing those defeats in the air, to just continuously proc that infinite grenade recharge on your Sunbracers. Now, in addition to these Sunbracers making these last a little bit longer, we have the addition of Touch of Flame with those solar grenades, which also increases its linger duration, plus it periodically emits blobs of lava around it, which is where that extra damage comes in, plus they burn extra long, so it is a nice chunk of damage. If you stun a champion, you have a Heat Rises and that melee active, so you can just continuously throw grenades at it. It'll absolutely melt those champions. Now, starting out right here with Ember of Ashes for our fragments, we apply more Scorch stacks to targets, which comes in handy with another fragment, plus our melee and those solar grenades also spread Scorch, so it's a lot of ignitions going on since we apply so much. Next, right here, we have Ember of Char. Your solar ignitions spread Scorch to the affected targets, so another way that we're just continuously having that Scorch proc. Ignitions getting us back our abilities even faster, especially if we're in the air when this happens, and Heat Rises procs, we're going to get that melee back so fast, do that extra damage, get those defeats, proc Sunbracers, and you will see it is insane the amount of grenades that you can have. Now, third on our list of fragments, we have Ember of Resolve. So our solar grenade final blows cure us. This is so nice for that endgame activities or just higher level activities, nightfalls, whatever it may be. Wipe out a rank and file ad and then just continuously throw those grenades around. All those defeats that you're getting are going to cure you, which is a good amount of health that you're getting back. Plus, with Phoenix Dive, we get restoration and cure, so a couple different ways to have that survivability in that end game. Plus, that super is also coming back decently fast with all the Ores of Power that we're creating. Now, last but certainly not least, right here we have Ember of Singeing, so our class ability recharges faster when we scorch targets. We have Scorch everywhere, like I said, Grenade, Melee in our Phoenix Dive, plus we have that Explosions in Char and Ashes for our other fragments, so we're able to ability spam, like I said with this. Survivability and DPS is insane. Now, when we move on to weapons for this build right here, I personally went with Witherhoard to keep up that endgame feel and really stick that damage to some of those bosses, champions, like I said, especially when we get this on an enemy, plus all of those solar grenades. It's absolutely insane. Plus, it's so good at ad management. Definitely the SS tier of kinetic exotic weapons. Now, in this slot for our energy weapon, I went with the BXR Battler most of the time because when you're floating around, I like that little extra distance. Plus, if we don't have Sunbreakers procced, this has Incandescent Demolitionist, so that Scorch and Explosions and Defeats are giving us our grenade back as well. Not that that's necessary, a little bit of overkill when it is procced, but it is my favorite PvE solar rifle. And then if you're looking for something with Scorch as well with Incandescent, I have Callous Mini Tool. This can be used for those overload champions, and BXR is for barrier, plus that Scorch that we have we can use for unstoppable, since we're stacking it up and those ignitions cause that unstoppable to stun. And last but not least, digging this bad boy out of the vault, we got a legendary rocket in the Ascendancy with Ambitious Assassin and Explosive Light, stacking up to 6 with those extra damage for rockets. And this thing was a seasonal weapon a little while back, about 5-6 seasons ago, so pulled it out of the vault. Very good synergy with this build for some of the mods we have on our armor. Plus, it is just in general good at endgame activity with that Explosive Light giving us a nice juice to DPS when we pick up all those orbs of power that we are creating. Next off, moving on to our artifact right here, we're going to use Anti-Barrier Pulse for that BXR Battler. Now we are using the Overload SMG for Callous Mini Tool. Just kind of depends on what you're going into, switching on and off of those weapons. Now for me in the second column, I'm going with Authorized Grenade mods and then Authorized Solar mods right here, so they cost a lot less on our armor pieces. Just makes it a little bit easier to fit some of them into this build. Now next, we're really only using this as our last one in Shatter Orbs, easily one of the best perks on this entire artifact. So we create those orbs of power when breaking shield type with matching damage type. So all of those solar shields that we're breaking with our abilities weapons, we're creating even more orbs of power than we are with our armor mods anyways. Now for me, for this build, stat-wise, definitely gave myself 100 recovery for our Phoenix Dive. Stopped this at 80 in resilience. Usually you want 100, but was feeling this inside of the 80. Just didn't feel right leaving my grenade energy lower than 80, as well as the strength anything less than 6. But that's definitely the two that you want the most in PvE, resilience and recovery for Warlock. And then if you can stack strength, grenade with this build as well, those are the 4 you're wanting to build out. Now for our armor pieces and mods though, first off, we have Heavy Ammo Finder for that Ascendancy rocket to keep up that DPS in the endgame activities. We're also going to have Solar Siphon, so all of those defeats with our rocket or BXR Callous Mini Tool are going to help create even more orbs of power for us, which we use to get our super back, as well as on our armor pieces later. And then Ashes to Assets. Right now, having double stack isn't stacking up, so 1 is what we're going with. We gain super energy on those grenade defeats, and like you'll see in the gameplay and did at the beginning, those grenades are everywhere, so we get our Well of Radiance back very quickly with this build. Now when we move on to the Osiris arms right here in Sunbracers, we have Helium Spirals, increases the duration of those solar grenades, and solar melee kills grant unlimited solar grenade energy for a brief time. So it's insane the amount of grenades that you can throw and have out in the battlefield with this on, especially since they last a little bit longer with this, as well as that touch of frame aspect. Now for our mods right here, helping with that in the artifact that gives us the cheaper mod cost, we're going to have firepower, which gives us grenades, orbs of power on those defeats, and then we're having bolstering detonation. We grant class ability energy when doing damage with those grenades, and we also get our melee back when causing damage with grenades. So all of these are based on getting defeats or doing damage with the grenades to create orbs of power, get our class ability back, and our melee back. Moving on to the chest piece, nothing special right here. Solar reserves, so we can have 9 rockets inside of our Ascendancy. Nice for that DPS. Next right here on our boots, since it is Artifice armor, I do have an intellect to bump us up to 41. It was at 38, so it's just a +3 to intellect there. Nothing too special. More importantly, we have solar weapon surge, so when we have that armor charge from picking up everything in the orbs of power, we're gonna get a nice extra boost to damage for our Ascendancy, as well as our BXR Battler or our Callus mini tool, since they're also solar. Now on top of that, with picking up orbs of power and proccing the solar weapon surge, we're also going to proc insulation, which gives us our Phoenix dive back a little bit faster and better already, so we get health back immediately after we pick up an orb of power. Just another facet that we have to keep us alive in that end game, along with our grenades giving us cure and our ability in Phoenix dive giving us restoration and cure. Now, last but certainly not least, we have Reaper and Time Dilation, pretty staple for most builds inside of the PvE realm. We have Reaper, so when we cast our class ability using that Phoenix dive, our next weapon final blow, no matter what it is, even our Wither Horde, spawns an orb of power, allowing us to proc all of that like we just talked about on our boots, give us our super, give us that armor charge, and then Time Dilation, so that solar weapon surge lasts a little bit longer, and that armor charge decays pretty slow in my opinion, so you're always having that up and proc, so you can see the amount of craziness that we have in this build and orbs of power, especially when you're going into something that also has solar shields, just because of that ability with shatter orbs to create even more orbs of power is actually insane in my opinion. So that is why I have this as our new meta for the PvE realm, taking us away from that fusion grenade build and Starfire Protocol. Like I said, with the nerf, we went from being able to get 4 grenades. Now inside of that nerf, we only get 1 in the same amount of time with the defeats and everything like that inside of your rift. So it is a pretty big nerf, and this right here with how this is built out is good for endgame activity, good for going in, having fun with your friends. It is a very, very versatile build in my opinion, and who doesn't want a Well Warlock on their team for some of that endgame activities? These things are nasty. I've seen people absolutely nuking raid bosses riven with these, throwing a bunch of the grenades on top of it, having it rain down those bloops. So like I said, the DPS ad management of this build is off the charts, and I definitely think it's going to be seen a lot more coming out in the future here once people start learning and picking up that their grenades really aren't coming back at all with that Starfire Protocol, and you get them back so fast with this build. Thank you guys for watching. Hopefully y'all like this build, can give it a try. Let me know what you think of it. Love the support lately. Y'all have been absolutely blowing me away, so thank y'all again for that. Absolutely crazy. If you aren't subscribed, don't be afraid to hit that subscribe button and bell so you never miss videos like this with these crazy builds, as well as I go over a lot of god rolls, as well as touch up on some things, sleeper builds, sleeper weapons, stuff like that. So thank you guys again, truly appreciate it. I'll catch y'all in the next one. Peace.